Hello, my conscious evolutionaries. Welcome back to the campfire. If you're new here, welcome, welcome. This is our weekly connection moment where we have a little Fika, which means as much as having a cup of coffee and tea with some sweets together and some awesome conversation. And today we're going to be talking about the ego, which is one of the most misunderstood concepts among human beings, I think, especially in the spiritual community. So since we have a Mars Retrograde coming up, which has everything to do with our ego, I thought it is about high time that we have a decent conversation about this. But also, this is our little moment to unwind, have a chat, connect, and enjoy yourselves a little bit. So if you're very much in a hurry, you can always go and check in the timestamps, what's being said when, and which parts are very interesting to you. So you might be able to skip over the little bit more of the slower moments or the moments where we're just having a little bit more of a chit chat. But first, let's start with the most important part of our episode. Have some Fika. So pour yourself a cup and then we'll dive into all of our ego issues, shall we? Oh, it's so lovely to hold a warm cup right now. As you can see, it's pretty frozen out here. I came back to the lake today, not up at the hut at the high point, but at the place where we go swimming in summer. So that's a little less far and it was a little bit easier for me to reach. And I have a pretty big campfire going to keep me warm. So I think we are all set. So where do we start? The ego. There is so much to say about this. Well, let's start by what I think everybody should understand as the absolute first thing, or the absolute minimum, or the absolute pivotal part of this. An ego is an integral part of a human incarnation. So anything that has to do with getting rid of the ego, killing off the ego, anything like that, just run away from it as far as you can. Does that mean there are no issues? Hell no. There are so many issues. And a lot of the people teaching about removal, it comes from understanding that there are issues. But if those are all the words that you have for it, you probably shouldn't be teaching about it. If all you can say to people is get rid of it, kill it, you really don't understand it. And in my opinion, have no business teaching about it. So just understand that it is a very integral part of a human being and you cannot be incarnated without it. But because we're so far out of alignment with who we're actually supposed to be, that a lot of our different parts, and then I'm not talking per se fragmentation parts due to trauma, which also are a big problem, but literally like the different parts of ourselves, our mind, our ego, our heart, our feelings, all of these things are out of alignment and are doing things they're not supposed to do. And we don't understand which function all of these different parts are supposed to have. So because of that, I've heard things that I do like, which is like we have an inflamed ego or an out of alignment ego or an unintegrated ego, which are all things I can get behind because we do. And yeah, that's a much more important thing to understand. And I think we should have evolved enough to understand that kind of nuance in it. It's not this black or white thing. The ego is a bad thing. No, absolutely not. But do we have issues with the ego? Absolutely. We are not using it the way it's supposed to be. It's completely unintegrated. It does things it's not supposed to do. It's taking on jobs it's not supposed to do. So all of that is just very big, problematic situations that we're creating through our misaligned, unintegrated ego. So why are we talking about this today? Because the 6th of December, which will be the week after this video comes out, we will have a Mars retrograde. And in astrology, Mars represents our ego. And so as something goes retrograde, it is an optical illusion that something's moving backwards, which is representative of us having to reevaluate this certain aspect of our life. So we have a big reevaluation of our ego coming up. And that also kind of means it goes a little bit offline, kind of like when your computer like needs an upgrade, or like when you have like server maintenance, when something needs to be upgraded and a bunch of things need to be uploaded, it goes offline for a little bit. So that's what's going to happen basically during this Mars retrograde. And if we are aware of this, if we're prepared for this, we can go through this process more consciously, which is all what we are about here, basically. So let's take a sip. Let's see if I can keep that fire kind of going. Because it was so nice and big and warm. Okay. It was actually very funny or coincidental, but I don't believe in coincidence. But I already picked the subject 2 days ago, and my weekly schedule got a little bit altered to what it usually is. And so I watched the Astro Monday actually on Thursday, the day after I decided on the subject. And since, of course, it was also talking about this subject as it is coming up, I heard something said that, kind of triggered the shit out of me. And I'm pretty sure the ego is a very triggering subject for everyone. Because, everybody has such a idea about it, and there has been so much misconception about it that it's really hard to talk about it without triggering other people. And that includes myself. But I get triggered by anyone that says things that teach people or that even just imply, even if it's not what they're really trying to say, that we are moving into a less incarnated state or a less three-dimensional state, like all of those things about ascension and 5D are, in my opinion, so misunderstood. And most of those teachings all have to do with moving to a different dimension, like we're going to leave the third dimension, or things starting to work like they're working in other dimensions, in higher dimensions, like things are just going to think of it and it's just going to appear and it's going to activate immediately, and all those types of things. And I really believe that's completely wrong. I believe that all that is happening is that we are starting to see things from a higher perspective, which allows us to see the bigger picture. And through seeing that bigger picture, we start to understand better who we are as individuals, but also as a collective. And we start to understand that we are more part of this collective, which is all wrapped up in this Mars retrograde, basically, because what they were saying were things like the ego is going to stop existing. But then as you listened a little bit further, there was some nuance to that where they were saying like, okay, we're moving from the ego to the we-go. So we're not longer going to have an ego, but we are going to be in the collective and this individual in the collective, which, yes, this is like exactly the same thing as what I've been saying for so long. What I believe the age of Aquarius to be is where we all are these unique puzzle pieces in this very big puzzle, and we all have to develop ourselves into that puzzle piece so that we can become part of that very beautiful puzzle. So even though the words were, in my opinion, much what is the word, left to, I don't know, not sure how to say this in English. Like, there was a lot of improvement possible in the vocabulary and in the explanation of this. But I also understand it because there are people who are coming from this very kind of psychic perspective. But the problem with people coming from psychic perspectives is not that they per se see the absolute truth. They see things, they get to see things, but most of it is symbolic. It's like I've heard people talk about they've seen Atlantis and they were talking about technology and they were talking about they had cell phones and they had like things like that. That's not in alignment with the information that I have received and gathered. But I think that's just their brains giving them pictures of what we envision when we think of a developed society, when we think of having technology, when we think of, a higher developed society than we currently have. We see that through what our mind is programmed with, what we know, which is cell phones, which is the internet, which is all that type of things. But that's not actually what was back then. It was like sound technology, and it was through collective consciousness and pyramids and all of these things that they had technology. And they had just very high consciousness and were very connected, and all that created a very high level of civilization, but it didn't look anything like what our civilization looks like today. But since we have no actual concept of that, that's what we see. That's also why we believe that angels are humans with wings. That's just because that is what our mind can kind of perceive and envision when they think about higher beings or things in the sky, because we know birds and all of that things. So if you hear those things, don't take them literally. They even like admitted, oh, we were talking about this timeline shift and they were going to this version of Earth and these people were going to that version of Earth and those people were going to another version of Earth and we're not going to like be together on this planet anymore. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, we realize now that was wrong. But that's just symbolism that's trying to express something else. And way too often that is sold as an objective truth and is not really taken into what it really means. Because they see it before the process happens. So it's only like after the process happens that you can see what actually happened, what actually changed. And most changes are pretty subtle. That's because everything is evolution. It's not like one day it's like this and the next day everything is completely different. It's not how it works. It's all these subtle changes one after another. And in this particular change, our ego will start to get a reprogramming where we start to understand that we have more collective interest than we realized up till now, where now our ego really identified as this individual and there was all of this win-lose scenarios and I have to fight for myself because if I don't fight for myself, no one else will. And my survival depends on my skills to get what I need. And I don't consider myself part of this planet. I don't consider myself as part of humanity and having an actual role in that. I just am me, this one person, and that's it. So yeah, it's very important that we start to upgrade that, because also as I decided that I was going to do this, of course, information is shown to me as to what to share. And I bumped into an older interview of Sadhguru where he has this beautiful explanation. Whereas our mind, which is also in retrograde at the moment, we have Mercury retrograde, so it's not a coincidence that years are like happening together right now, or will be happening together for a while. Our mind is basically like a knife. You want it to be sharp, you want your mind to be sharp. You want a knife to be sharp. It's like a knife. And then it's like a tool. And it's not your memory. Memory is something else. Memory is like a container filled with all things. You can see it like kind of like your body. And you have your personal information, you have genetic information, you have collective information, you have like human information, you have like all types of information. Like most of it, I think, is stored in your DNA. I hope that we start to understand more about that soon. But, or it's at least connected to your DNA. That's how it makes you who you are. That's how your body knows it has to become a human and not a dog, basically, because you have human DNA that has human coding in it. And then you have your personal things, you have your ancestral things, you have cosmic things, you have like so much more than we are in general aware of. And basically what connects that body of information to that knife is a hand and an arm, basically. And so that hand is your identity. And depending on what you identify yourself as, that's how the knife gets used. And you can use a knife to do good and a knife to do bad. And he also made a very, very good point that it's usually the ones that are trying to do good or be good that start to do the harm, because people that are just trying to be, they just do things, and it's in function of trying to always be good that we start to really mess up and panic and start to do all types of things, because we identify with being good, or we identify with being this nationality. I'll just go with his example. It's easier than trying to make one up, and it worked very well. Because if I am very identified with my nationality and I am a good person, I am a good national person, and all of a sudden there is a problem with another country, I will go and fight and kill people if I have to, because I am a good person who's identified with my nationality. If you're not identified with that nationality and you go like, well, they are people too, you're not going to go fight and kill other people. I agree that there are sometimes government coercion and all of these things, but you get the gist of the example. So if that ego, if that identification is not placed correctly, if that's missing pieces, and if other pieces are completely inflated, if our very individualistic wants are completely inflated, because we also believe that we cannot get what we need, so we're just like driven in this completely egotistical thing that's trying to fill a whole bunch of voids. And if we're not identified with, I am part of nature, I need to maintain the balance in that nature, I'm part of this planet, I'm part of this human species, and everything I do affects all of these other beings and things that are actually connected to me in some way. And I can have a place in this whole picture without needing to take away or destroy or harm or do all of those things. That's where the ego gets out of whack. Because if we don't see that picture and we only see that very small picture, and that very small picture then becomes this ginormous thing, then we have a problem. So don't kill the whole thing. It is so important that you keep your individuality. Ego can be as simple as, I really love dark chocolate. That's part of my ego. That is something I love. That's something I like. That's part of like a boundary, a preference of mine. And that's fine. But it's not okay if all I think about is, I need chocolate and I can do anything just to get that. And I'm willing to kill or steal or whatever just so I can get my chocolate because I want it. If I can see that I really like chocolate, but I'm okay, and there is other food, and I can get food when I need it, and even if there's no chocolate available right now, then there will be chocolate available to me in the not too far distant future, and I am not in any danger or problematic situation. And given the whole of where I'm at right now, it is best that I right now just understand that it's not here and it will be here when I need it. But actually it is here, so have something. And I hope that you can see that that means, like what I said before about third dimension, fifth dimension, excuse me, third dimension and fifth dimension, and it just being a higher perspective where we kind of zoom out a little bit. Fifth dimension is basically where your higher self lives and where that kind of sends its information from, because it sees like this much bigger picture. It's like looking from a hot air balloon. You see like the entire area, not just this little bit that I'm seeing from underground here. And so as we get more and more access to that higher perspective, that also means that we're going to start seeing like, oh, actually, I cannot just do whatever I want there, because now I can see it has consequences there. And if I keep dumping my shit, just my chemicals here in this river, and I don't see what happens at the end because I'm just sitting here, well, then I don't have a problem. But if I start to have a higher perspective and I start to see, oh, by the end of that river, everything is starting to die. And now there is like some kind of problematic thing growing, and it's starting to like move, and it's like, I don't know, some kind of pest or something, and it's coming here. Now it's going to be a problem because everything that I'm growing in my garden is going to be affected by, I don't know, this fungus or this bug or whatever that has been growing there because there's so much pollution there. And eventually it's going to come here. And that's the thing right now we're just doing, and we're not seeing that perspective. So the more that we start to get that perspective, the more that we also start to understand like, okay, I'm not just an individual. I'm actually part of bigger things. And what I do affects others. What others do affect me. But we can learn to coexist in a harmonious way if we start to get our ego identifications right. Which means like, yeah, I am an individual. I have individual needs, and those needs deserve to be met. I also have to learn the difference between wants and needs, because wants is just what I want, and it's kind of optional. What you need, not so much. And then what I do, how does it affect my environment? How does it affect other people? And how does it contribute to my place in this bigger puzzle? And if that's something that we can work on from the beginning of December till I think somewhere the end of February, then hopefully that will get us a big step closer to that higher perspective and to a more harmonious society, basically. So that's why I really wanted to mention that today, because if we all can make sure that that hand that wields our mind is working properly and not just like, I don't know, like some kind of psycho horror movie arm trying to stab everybody, but instead saying like, oh, I have a knife. I can go cut off some wood so I can make a fire. Or I can cut some vegetables so I can cook food. Then we will be doing a whole lot better, I think, than where we are right now. So it really is not about getting rid of it, but it is really about taking a good hard look at it and seeing what's working and being honest about where am I causing harm in the bigger picture? What can I do? And don't try to be perfect. That's another one of those ego things where it's this defense mechanism where we've all picked up like, oh, well, there was some problematic situation. I couldn't fix it. It must have been because I wasn't perfect. So if I'm perfect, I will be able to fix all situations. But as Tony Robbins always says so eloquently, perfect or being perfect is the lowest standard because it's absolutely unattainable. So if you try to reach for something that you can never reach, you're never going to get there. So it basically becomes the lowest standard. Just go for improvement, go for what you can. Because I am the realistic person. So I understand that society has limits. I also cannot buy everything absolutely ecological or do everything as perfect. There we go back with that word. I am a recovering perfectionist, by the way. So, not as well as I like it to be, but we just do what we can and we just try to improve a little bit every day and do a little bit more everywhere that we can. And if we can't, at least we can be conscious of what we're doing and think of solutions and think of better ways to do it. And then eventually we'll start moving in that direction. But yeah, I do believe intent is one thing, but action is definitely the next. And I don't think we won't, I don't think that taking action is something that's going to change. This is the third dimension. This is going to stay the third dimension. And action is the language of the third dimension. That's how you basically signal the universe. What you think matters. It's one signal. What you feel is another. But the strongest is definitely what you do and what actions that you take. And that's where you basically interact and show the universe, like, I'm serious. And in that argument I agree that there is a lot of I don't know how to call it, bureaucracy in action as well, like where if you want to do something, you have to go through so much hoops to get things officially cleared or something. And yes, I would love for those things to run more smoothly and more based on common sense. But at the same time, I know that common sense is not everywhere as abundant these days as I would like it to be. So I think it's just going to be some things that we are going to have to take into consideration. That's just something that we have to deal with. I don't think that's going to go away. But if we get our ego in a much more integrated and correct perspective, maybe we perceive it a little bit differently, because this is also one of these things that's so often said, like, we're not going to basically 3 different planets. We're all going to stay on the same planet, but we're not going to be bothered by each other. And I can get to that till a certain extent, but not to the extent that it was being expressed. I do believe if you're aware enough and aligned enough and like something happens to shake up the unconscious population, that if your choice was, or your job is here now to, well, I am going to be building the new or creating a new or helping the people that are being woken up through whatever is happening, that if that was your hometown, by some kind of miracle, you weren't home. If like whatever tragedy happens would have taken you if you were at your job or in your car or at your home in the usual place or time, like you won't be there. But I also think there then might be people, well, I am here to wake these people up. And if for some kind of, I don't know what to call this, spiritual suicide mission, I don't know if that's the right word, but I I know there are like sometimes children being born white, and then why do they get sick? Sometimes it's so that a parent can take care of them, or there is some kind of value in that process. And so there might be some kind of value that from a human perspective we can not really recognize, but there might be from a more cosmic perspective into losing someone that you love in that kind of tragedy, even if that person was already conscious because they kind of agreed to it as part of their incarnation. Now I kind of lost my train of thoughts. Why was I saying this? Oh yeah, so that I do believe that to being conscious enough about it, we can kind of avoid the traps that are still there if you're not conscious about it to certain extents. But if your whole street exploded, basically, you might not have been home, but your house will be gone. And that's not going to change because you're conscious. That's just the reality of 3D, of this third dimension. So be the change you want to see in the world. Take this upcoming 3 months to take a good deep look at your ego, willingly and consciously, which makes that process usually a lot more smooth and pleasurable than if the universe has to drag your ass through the retrograde. And yeah, I am curious what we will feel like when this is done. Because even though I do not like the way they express these predictions, I think that's the word I couldn't get to earlier. I do know that they always have good reasons and they're always onto something. So I really, really, really do hope that we're onto something right now. I think so. And I'm not too worried. Realistically speaking, there are a lot of challenges on a global scale that we're going to face. But like I said before, it is quite possible to, as an individual, not be too bothered by it. And if you are, probably part of your plan. I know the plans are not always as glamorous or fun as we would like, but this is Earth. This is pretty hardcore. This is transformation at its highest peak. So if you're here, you're already at quite the warrior level, let's say, just by incarnating here. This is not for the faint of heart. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your service as a human, as a conscious evolutionary. And also, thank you for watching. I am going to end this session today because my feet are getting really, really cold. And the fire is also almost out. So I think this will be it for this week. Give me 1 second. If all goes well and nothing went wrong with this recording, this session will be up tomorrow at the normal time. So I wish you all a very good weekend, and keep your eyes on my social media, because soon I will have some very, very exciting news coming up as we're looking into starting the inner sanctum up for real this time. And I am hoping to get that up by the 21st of December so that we can have like a big celebration for Yule and midwinter and everything till the end of the year, with like a lot of free activities for everybody to enjoy and participate. And then we can officially start with the regular programming in January. So that's going to be hopefully a very joyous end of year and a very healing end of year. Let's see if there's anything else. If you're still interested in joining the Inner Compass Challenge, you can still message me. I can see if I can make another spot for you. And it's getting really hard. I'm getting really cold. I think, yeah. I don't know if I already said thank you for watching, but thank you for watching if I haven't already. If you like these videos, please give them a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell so that you'll be notified when I put up a new video. If you want to reach me, every link you could possibly need is in the description below. And yeah, if you want to learn more how to concretely do these things, like I said, that's what the inner sanctum is going to be for. Like, these are just conversations, things in my head that I want to share with you. But if you want to get into the practical applications, join the inner sanctum when we get started. So make sure that you're signed up for my newsletter. Then you will be notified when that's happening. Or you can already start now by joining the Inner Compass Challenge. Okay, I think that's it. Enjoy your weekend, and I will see you next week. Bye, guys. Love you.